Hi there. Welcome to, what week are we on here? Week 14. You are almost to the end of the road. Are you feeling the light dawning at the end of the tunnel? I hope so. This week, you're reading chapters 16 and 17 in the Babby text. 16 is all about statistics, and 17 is about writing your proposal. So I hope that they're helpful in answering some of the last questions that you may have as you are writing these things. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. Chapter 16 is a chapter that can be very scary for those of you who haven't taken statistics yet. And I don't want you to be frightened by it. Babby, who is the author of your text, knows that you may not have taken statistics yet. And he does a very good job of explaining these really basic types of analyses, I think, in a way that is easy for students to understand. If you've had statistics before, you'll be finding this, as I mentioned in a previous video, as sort of a review, which I hope helps clarify for you. For those of you who have not had statistics yet, fear not, you can still do this. This is an introduction to statistics, and he does a very good job of introducing you to these things. You don't have to know how to run the statistics and analyze the output for this assignment. All you need to be able to do is determine which method or procedure you would use, and that is well within the scope of research methods. Some people say, oh, that's stats. I haven't done stats yet, but excuse me. Part of methods is being able to determine what type of analysis you'll do. The reason I say that, if you will go into Blackboard or Course Shell under Assignments, you'll see Samples. Open that. Many of you have been asking me some questions about the proposal, and it makes me feel like maybe you haven't gone there to look at this yet. I think if you look at some of those samples, some of your questions will be answered, especially the sample proposal that's there. And like I said, it's not the best thing I've ever written, and you can see if you look at the final draft how many changes were made between proposal and final outcome. That it wasn't even my final draft of my proposal, just the only one I could find. But it gives you a good way, outline of the format, of the logical organization, the lay of the land. In your method section, you need to tell, and some people have said, this is a pretend study, I'll never really do this. I want you to stop thinking like that. It doesn't matter to me if you're never going to actually do this study or not. I want you to write it to me as if you are. So you need, in your method section, to give me a clear plan for how this study will happen. In your introduction, you have set up for me what the problem is. You've hooked me. The literature review, you've made sense of the body of literature for me. You've told me what people have found, where the contradictions lie, what questions still need to be answered. And in the method section, and in the review of the literature, you've also ended with the research questions that you will address. In the method section, you're going to tell me how you're going to answer that question or questions. Okay? So you need to tell me who your sample is going to be, how you will recruit them, how many people you want to get and why. You are going to need to tell me what your procedure will be. How will you conduct the study? What will happen? You also need to tell me what instruments that you are going to use. This helps me understand how you're operationalizing your variables. You need to tell me what your independent variables will be and where you will get that information. For example, if I'm doing a study on, I want to look at if there are differences in levels of formal education in teachers in early childhood programs in terms of the quality levels of the classrooms that they teach in. I'm going to ask them for their age, their education level, how many hours of training they receive each year, their job satisfaction, for example. And then I'm going to tell you in my proposal where I'm getting these independent variables. So formal education is an independent variable. I need to tell you where I'm getting that. It might be as simple as saying item 10 on the questionnaire, see Appendix A, will provide the data for this independent variable. And then you'll tell me. Respondents will choose a response between 1 and 5, 1 being less than high school, 2 being high school diploma, 3 being, so you're being very specific, laying it all out. And you'll do the same thing with your dependent variables. This is where you operationalize your dependent variables. How are you measuring quality? That's a very abstract concept. So I would need to say, global quality will be measured using the Early Childhood Environment Rating Scale by Clifford Harms and Cryer, whatever. But I need to lay that out. And then I need to give some information about that measure. What is the reliability and validity established by the authors? What are some sample items? What do they look at? Okay, so that's the instrumentation and operationalization of variables. And then some people include this part in the method section, and some people, like myself, make a new section called the plan of analysis. You can do it whichever way makes more sense to you. But I can tell you that if you're my advisee and I'm your supervisor for a thesis or dissertation, I will have you do a plan of analysis chapter. And the reason I recommend that is because for me it's easier. You make a 5th chapter, call it plan of analysis, and that's where you put in, here's your research question 1, here's hypothesis 1, here is how you will determine the answer to that question. For example, if I think there will be differences in quality levels for these teachers, then I will say that. My hypothesis, are there differences in global classroom quality based on teacher education level, formal education level? My research question. So my hypothesis might say, teachers with more formal education will work in classrooms with a higher global quality rating. Okay, there's my hypothesis, right? So how will I find evidence for that? Well, I would tell you. I will tell you that I will do an ANOVA, for example, measuring to see if there are group differences in formal education. Group differences significant at 0.05 will provide evidence for this or provide support for this hypothesis. I mean, it's as simple as that. So getting back to chapter 16, sorry, I kind of went on a tangent. You don't have to know how to run the analysis, how to read the output. You just have to know which analysis would be most appropriate and be able to tell me which analysis you'll do, which variables will be included, and what the significance level would be that would offer support for your hypothesis. And that's where it ends. Now, if you're really doing this study, then yeah, you'd have to know how to run the analyses, and you would have assistance from an advisor or somebody in doing so. So as you read chapter 16, think carefully about what it is you've asked, what research questions you've established in your lit review, and decide, are descriptive statistics most appropriate? Almost every study reports descriptive statistics, by the way. It's usually the beginning. It's usually not sufficient for an entire study. There usually is some inferential statistics involved, because you tell us what your sample looked like with the variables of interest. That's the descriptive part. And then if it's quantitative, you most likely want to infer this same meaning to the larger population. Otherwise, why would you have done it? Qualitative may be a little bit different. Remember, this chapter is focused on quantitative analyses. So descriptive statistics just tell us about the sample, about the variables for your sample. And inferential statistics are where you're saying, this is what I found in my sample, and because of my sample, I think I can say that the larger population would be the same way. Okay, that's why your sample is so important. So, you can read in the chapter about all the different types of analyses, regression analyses, ANOVAs, Pearson's product moment correlations. I can give you a little hint. Your book talks about factor analysis and discriminant analysis and path analysis and things like that. These are things that you probably will not be focusing on for this study. Factor analysis is usually done if you're trying to create a questionnaire or test a questionnaire of some sort. Path analysis, that might be just a little bit more complex than what you're ready to get into at this point, because you're really just learning how to do this. So you're probably going to be sticking mostly with correlations, regressions, ANOVAs, things like that. And that is perfectly fine. I don't want you to feel like you need to go really far out there. Okay, I think this video has ended up being more about your proposal than about the chapter. So hopefully it's helpful. If you need more information about the specific analytic procedures outlined in Chapter 16, you have questions, put it on the boards and I'll make a video Q&A for you. But that will be so student-specific, I think, because the one that you need for your proposal is probably the one that you're going to have the most questions about. So feel free to ask me. Email, Q&A boards, whatever. so that we can make sure that you understand what you're doing for your proposal. Good luck to you, and I look forward to reading your final copies that are due on the 8th of May. Note that's a Friday at 5 p.m. Have a good week.